Ritual monsters already have an inherent handicap for just how their whole card mechanics work, in addition to the -2 that goes into bringing them out normally. So in this list, we'll be going over some of the least useful ritual monsters in the game that actually have effects, which don't have effects that are good enough to really make up for the limitations of being a ritual monster. And at number 10, we have Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon. This is a level 8 ritual monster which can be summoned with Chaos form as a ritual card, which in itself allows you to ritual summon any Chaos ritual monster using cards from your hand or field as materials, or banishing the Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician from your graveyard whose total levels equal exactly the Chaos ritual monster you wish to summon. And Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon has the effect where it cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and it gains an additional effect if it was ritual summoned using Blue Eyes White Dragon as one of its materials, where if it declares an attack, you can change the battle position of all of your opponent's monsters, and if you do, the attack and defense of those changed monsters become 0 permanently. And also, this card gains the ability to inflict piercing battle damage this turn. So if this card is not brought out with Blue Eyes White Dragon as one of its materials, then it's simply a 3000 attack beat stick that can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects, which is actually pretty decent protection. There's another Blue Eyes ritual monster called Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon, which has 1000 more attack, and basically its selling point is just being a high attack monster that can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects, which can also inflict double piercing battle damage. And while Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon has seen some niche success, Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon, which seems like it has a better effect, has seen a total of 0 competitive play. You see, ritual monsters themselves are already inherently limited due to the mechanics required in order to bring them out. You need to search out 2 specific cards from your deck. Then you need the materials in order to use those cards in conjunction in order to bring out the ritual monster. And Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon only gains its good effect if you're able to add a 3rd specific card to that whole exchange, i.e. getting a Blue Eyes White Dragon in your graveyard so that you can banish it with Chaos form in order to gain Chaos Dragon's effect. And if you do go through all the effort in order to gain its good effect, the effect itself is not really that good for the work required for it. You can kind of accomplish the same thing with just a Raigeki or a Lightning Storm, to probably better effect too. Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon has to survive to the battle phase, declare an attack, then you can only reduce the attack and defense of a monster to 0 if you're able to change its battle position, which means Link monsters are immune to its effect. Although with the baseline of being untargetable and indestructible, it does actually put it a little bit ahead of all the other cards on this list. And at number 9, we have Salamangreat Emerald Eagle. This is a level 8 ritual monster which can be ritual summoned with the card Rise of the Salamangreat. The ritual spell card allows you to summon a Salamangreat ritual monster from your hand by attributing materials from your hand or field whose levels meet or exceed the level of the ritual monster. Or, if you control a Fire Link monster, you can also use Salamangreat monsters in your graveyard by shuffling them into your deck. So it's kind of like Chaos form. It can be used as a normal ritual spell card, but has conditions in order to allow you to use materials from your graveyard, which is usually a lot better, because that means not losing too much card advantage in order to bring out the ritual monster. And the ritual spell card even has an additional niche effect, where if it's destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon Salamangreat Emerald Eagle from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. So if you set this card in your back row to bait your opponent into destroying it, then you get to ritual summon the monster from your hand for free. Or I guess it's still at the cost of a -1. The ritual monster itself has the effect that if it's ritual summoned using another copy of itself as a material, you can destroy all special summon monsters your opponent controls. So already, that's a pretty good effect, assuming you ritual summon this card with another copy of itself. However, it goes on to have a normal effect where once per turn you contribute a Salamangreat Link monster in order for this card to gain the effect, where if it battles a monster, at the start of the damage step, you get to destroy that opponent's monster and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. So kind of like Super Rush Headlong that also inflicts burn damage. Now, this effect is actually not half bad. It's just kind of the cost associated to it. You have to tribute one of your Salamangreat monsters in order to use the effect, and one of your Link monsters at that. Sure, Salamangreats have Link 1 monsters, so it's easy enough to convert one of them into one of those to fuel this card's effects. But the effect itself could entirely just be baked into the card without requiring that cost at all, and it still probably wouldn't have seen play. Like, being able to destroy all of your opponent's special summon monsters on its summon is an excellent effect for a ritual monster because of how difficult they are to bring out. But adding the cost where it needs to use another copy of itself kind of turns it into a niche effect that you might be able to use. And the ability to crash into things and destroy them at the start of the damage step is also useful, as seen by Eater of Millions or Ally of Justice Cataster. But those cards don't have a cost to using their effects, which Salamangreat Emerald Eagle has a pretty significant cost. The card has two good effects, which are both hampered by requiring slightly harder than normal costs. Even though Salamangreats do have the gimmick where they like to use other copies of themselves for their effects, incorporating that into the ritual monster just kind of made it a little bit on the weaker end, where it never actually saw any competitive play, despite Salamangreat seeing tons of competitive play in the past. And at number 8, we have Vendread Chimera. This is a ritual monster from a ritual archetype, which can be ritual summoned with any Vendread ritual spell card. And Vendreads have two ritual spell cards to choose from. There's Vendread Origin, which allows you to tribute monsters from your hand or field, or banish zombie monsters from your graveyard in addition, as long as the levels exceed or equal the level of the ritual monster. A lot of modern ritual spell cards have this kind of effect, where they allow you to use materials from your graveyard, which is pretty standard. The card goes on to have a graveyard effect that allows you to banish this card from your graveyard in order to prevent a Vendread Slayer from being destroyed by battle or card effects, which means it doesn't work on Vendread Chimera. The other ritual spell card, Vendread Evolution, basically does the same thing as Origin, except instead of allowing you to use zombie monsters from your graveyard, it allows you to send a Vendread monster from your deck to the graveyard as one of its materials, but the ritual monster you bring out is destroyed during the end phase of the next turn. And Vendread Chimera has the effect where if a card effect would destroy a card in the field, you can banish one zombie monster from your graveyard to negate and destroy that card. So kind of like Stardust Dragon. It also has an additional effect where if it's used as material for a ritual summon, you can permanently make all of your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack and defense, and both of its effects are a hard once per turn. Now, the effect of being able to prevent a destruction effect once per turn is pretty good, as seen by Stardust Dragon being a decent card over the years. Although, there's a reason Stardust Dragon stopped being a staple level 8 synchro monster. There are so many ways to remove a monster from the field nowadays that only preventing a destruction effect isn't that big of a deal. The effect isn't bad, it's just not good enough. And generally, if the Vendread archetype is going to spend resources bringing out one of the ritual monsters, they're going to expend those resources on one of their other much better ritual monsters. And at number 7, we have Divine Grace Northwemko. This is a level 7 ritual monster which has the effect that when it's ritual summoned, you can select a number of face-up cards in the field equal to the amount of materials used for this card's ritual summon. And then, while those selected cards are face-up on this field, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects. So basically you get to choose a number of cards which determine if Northwemko keeps its indestructible status. However, Northwemko can still be destroyed by battle and can still be targeted by other card effects, so its protection is pretty lackluster. You can make it better if you give it Jin Demolisher Rituals as one of its materials so that it gains untargeted status, but at that point you're putting a whole bunch of resources into giving this card the default effect of Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon that has less attack and more weaknesses. Since it can eventually lose its indestructible status if your opponent just gets rid of the cards that it targeted. The ritual card for Northwemko, Ritual of Grace, requires you to use monsters from your hand or field as materials and simply has a graveyard effect, where you can banish this card from your graveyard in order to make one face-up ritual monster you control untargetable by card effects for this turn. And on a spell speed 1 effect that you can only use for your turn and only last for your turn, it's almost useless. So it has a pretty lackluster ritual spell card as well, and it may surprise you to hear this, but Northwemko never actually saw any competitive play. And at number 6, we have Shinato, King of a Higher Plane. This is a level 8 monster with 3300 attack that has the effect that if this card destroys a defense position monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of the destroyed monster. So basically it's a big beat stick that has an effect which might never apply because remember, it only works if it specifically destroys a defense position monster. If you want to crash this thing into an attack position monster, then it basically does not have an effect. Although with 3300 attack, this thing can beat over pretty much anything, except other cards whose sole purpose is having a high attack point value. Although it's essentially a vanilla monster most of the time that occasionally has a neat little effect where it might inflict burn damage. Its ritual spell card, Shinato's Arc, is just a regular vanilla card which doesn't have any extra effects except allowing you to ritual summon Shinato. So when the card did see play, it was usually brought out with Advanced Ritual Art, which allows you to use normal monsters from your deck as the materials, as it did see play in one Demise King of Armageddon deck, but mainly because it's also a level 8 monster, which just happened to have a high attack point value as an option to go into instead of Demise. Although being a high attack point pseudo vanilla monster, does give it a lot of benefits over some of the other cards on this list. And at number 5, we have Paladin of White Dragon. This is a level 4 ritual monster, which actually makes it a lot easier to bring out than some of the other higher level ones we've talked about so far, because chances are you can ritual summon this with only a single monster that you would play normally. And this card has the effect that if it attacks a face-down defense position monster, you can destroy that monster with this card's effect. So kind of like Drillroy. Not really the best effect in the world, but situationally useful. Its other effect is the main reason you play this card, is because you can tribute this card in order to special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand or deck. But monsters whose name is Blue Eyes White Dragon cannot attack for the rest of the turn. So you can tribute this card in order to special summon a vanilla monster from your deck, but it can't attack that turn, and it also locks out all your other Blue Eyes White Dragons from attacking for the rest of the turn as well. And the ritual spell card used in order to bring it out, White Dragon Ritual, is just another vanilla ritual spell card which doesn't have any other effects, except being able to bring out its ritual monster, using materials from your hand or field. So Paladin of White Dragon isn't very good, but it is the progenitor of the Paladin level 4 ritual monsters, which there have been a lot more of them over the years that have based their effects around Paladin of White Dragon, except having much better versions of those effects. Paladin of Dark Dragon was made for the Red Eyes archetype, and allows you to special summon any Red Eyes monster from your hand or deck. So you could use it in order to bring out Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, who then immediately could bring back Paladin of Dark Dragon from the graveyard, so that you could use its effect again on your next turn. Its ritual spell card even allows you to add a Red Eyes spell or trap card from your deck to your hand as its graveyard effect, so it's much better than its Blue Eyes counterpart, as the monster can bring out more targets, doesn't prevent those targets from attacking, and its ritual spell card allows you to gain advantage from the graveyard. Paladin of Photon Dragon allows you to do the same thing but for Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, and its ritual spell card from the graveyard allows you to ritual summon again by banishing it from the graveyard. Knight of Armor Dragon can special summon any level 5 or higher Wind Dragon monster from your hand or deck, and its ritual spell card allows you to special summon Knight of Armor Dragon from your graveyard so that it can use its effect again on your next turn. So while the original Paladin of White Knight Dragon might be kind of bad by today's standards, and even at the time as it never saw any competitive play, it was influential in directly contributing to the creation of all the other Paladin level 4 ritual monsters, which all rarely see competitive play. And at number 4, we have Ruin, Queen of Oblivion. This is a level 8 ritual monster, which has the effect that if it destroys a monster by battle, it can make a second attack in a row. So with only 2300 attack baseline, this card was never really played, even though the ritual spell card that can bring it out, End of the World, did actually see competitive play in the past. Because it also allows you to bring out Demise, King of Armageddon, and Demise allows you to pay 2000 life points to destroy all of the cards in the field. So while Demise might have had some competitive success, they never actually included its other counterpart, Queen of Oblivion, in any of their strategies. Because just having a low attack monster that can attack twice after destroying a monster by battle is just very underwhelming of an effect for a high level ritual monster. However, they did release a lot of support later on. Cycle of the World was a new ritual card which allows you to bring out Ruin or Demise, just like the normal ritual spell card, but it also has an additional effect in the graveyard, where during a different turn after this card was sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle this card into your deck in order to add the ritual spell card End of the World from your deck to your hand. Then you get to add either Ruin or Demise from your graveyard to your hand. So the graveyard effect can allow you to set the ritual summon of Ruin pretty easily, as it's just a straight up +2 in card advantage, which kind of offsets the inherent downside of ritual monsters being a -2 in card advantage. There's also Turning of the World, which allows you to ritual summon the card from your deck by tributing ritual monsters in your hand as materials, so you don't even need to search out Ruin. There's the ritual spell card that allows you to destroy or draw a card whenever it's ritual summoned, and then there's the 2 level 4 ritual monsters, which can grant a lingering effect, where it gains spell speed for protection and makes it so your opponent can't activate cards when it declares an attack. And even with all of this new support that can make bringing out Ruin way easier, it still doesn't see any competitive play. I don't think any other ritual monster on this list has this amount of support that makes it easier to bring out, and still is not worth the effort. And at number 3, we have the legendary Flame Lord. This is a level 7 ritual monster, which has the effect that each time you or your opponent activates a spell card, you can place 1 spell counter on this card. Then you can remove 3 spell counters from this card in order to destroy all of the monsters in the field except for this card. So with 2400 attack, being a high level ritual monster, and having a generic ritual spell card that doesn't make bringing it out easier, it's just a little bit too slow to actually see play. The effect of being able to destroy all of the monsters in the field is good, but requiring 3 spell counters makes it a little bit too slow. Generally, spell counter decks in the past haven't been very good, because of just how cumbersome they were to play with. And with ritual monsters themselves already being inherently cumbersome to play with, it was just a match made in non-competitive heaven. Nowadays, there are competitive decks which use spell counters, but their archetypes kind of use spell counters as more of a gimmick to activate their effects, and not really in a way where you're able to use Legendary Flamelord easier. This slow acclimation of spell counters has just shown time and time again that it's not really worth the effect unless it's part of some kind of FTK. If Legendary Flamelord had a whole bunch of support like Ruin Queen of Oblivion that made it easier to bring out, it might not be so high on this list, since the effect is technically decent, but it doesn't really have any support other than generic ritual support, so it's near the bottom at number 3. And at number 2, we have Lycanthrope. This is a level 6 ritual monster with 2400 attack that has the effect that if this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you get to inflict 200 points of damage to your opponent for each normal monster in your graveyard. So if you bring this card out with Advanced Ritual Art, which allows you to use normal monsters from your deck as the materials, and use 6 level 1 normal monsters as its materials, then it can inflict 1200 points of damage each time it inflicts battle damage to your opponent. Which seems like a pretty decent amount of effect damage to inflict to your opponent, just not on a ritual monster. Ritual monsters need way better effects than that in order to be worth the effort of bringing them out, as I've said time and time again on this list. If this effect was attached to just a regular level 6 effect monster, it still probably wouldn't see play. The fact that it's attached to a ritual monster makes it just kind of a bad card, especially since playing normal monsters in of themselves is a detriment to your deck. Even decks that do play normal monsters play the least amount of them as possible, because they're really bad for modern Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay of actually being able to use every card in your hand to do something. Normal monsters are just kind of dead cards in your hand, and coincidentally, so are ritual monsters and their spell cards, as this specific ritual spell card for Lycanthrope doesn't have any special effects, and there's no reason to use it over Advanced Ritual Art, which combos much better with Lycanthrope. There's also another ritual monster which was made for normal monster support, called Kukulin the Awaken, which could be worse or better depending on what you want. But basically, it just has 500 attack and has the effect to banish a normal monster from your graveyard in order to gain its attack until your next standby phase. So if you banish the Blue Eyes White Dragon from your graveyard, it's a 3500 attack beat stick with no effect, which is not good enough for the inherent cost of playing a ritual monster. At least Shinato, King of a Higher Plane, has a high attack without requiring you to play normal monsters in your deck, and has a chance to have an additional effect if you attack into something that's in defense mode. And at number 1, we have Elemental Mistress Doriado. This is a level 3 ritual monster which has low stats in the effect, where its attribute, in addition to being light, is also treated as wind, water, fire, and earth. So it's basically every attribute in the game except for dark and divine. And a 1 card with a whole bunch of different attributes means you can use this card with Furin Kazan in order to use one of its 4 good effects. And this was definitely a very fine combo to do in casual play, which is incredibly inefficient in actual competitive environments. Outside of being able to activate Furin Kazan with a single monster on the field, it's not really a useful ritual monster, and its ritual spell card is just a generic one that doesn't have any special effects. So while Furin Kazan has 4 really good effects, none of the effects are good enough to offset playing a hard to bring out ritual monster that doesn't have any other benefits besides having multiple attributes. It did enjoy some niche rogue success in very early Duel Links, but never saw any success at all in regular TCG, and is only slightly above some of the other non-effect ritual monsters in usefulness. Alright, and that's the list. Do you think there's any other ritual monsters that I may have missed, which should have definitely been in the video? Or do you have ideas for future videos just like this one? If so, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments.